Hello everyone. In today's video, we are going to talk about top 30 microservices interview questions and answers. Myself Mohammad Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro really fast. So without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1. What do you mean by microservices? Well, microservices are an approach or architectural style that we use to build applications. This architecture provides a rapid, reliable, and frequent delivery of complex and extensive applications over the network. Microservices are loosely coupled and distributed, so they will not break the entire system if you make some changes in one part of them. We also know microservices as microservice architecture. They are a variant of the service-oriented architecture style that we use to structure an application as a collection of services that can have some of the features like highly maintenance and testing. It can be deployed independently, can be owned by the small teams, and has the organization around the business capabilities. And then it is loosely coupled and distributed. Number 2. What are the best practices that you can follow to design the microservices? Well, we can follow many practices to design the microservices, and some of them are as follow. Separate the data from each of the microservices. You should keep your code at a similar level of maturity, and you should have a separate build for each microservices. Then deploy them into containers, and at last, treat your servers as stateless. Number 3. Please tell us about some of the main components of microservices. Well, the first one is IAC, or it is also known as infrastructure as code conception. Then we have cloud infrastructure. Then comes API gateway, then comes container, clustering, and orchestration. Then comes service delivery, and then we have enterprise service bus. Number 4. What are the most significant benefits of using microservices? Well, some of the most remarkable benefits of using microservices are that we can build the applications to collect small services that are automated and are developed for the business's domain. So, if the business needs and requirements change frequently, the development team can rapidly build the new app component to meet the business requirements. Each microservice has a unique process and communication through a well-defined mechanism, like we have a container to serve the business goal. Number 5. What challenges can you come across while working with microservices architecture? When we talk about developing the small number of microservices, it sounds easy. But some of the challenges occur while developing as follow. First one is perceptibility. It becomes very hectic to maintain a large number of components together, and it becomes more difficult to deploy, maintain, identify, and monitor the problem. It requires having great perceptibility around all the components. Then comes debugging. It is a challenging and time-consuming to find each service for an error. It is essential to maintain centralized logging to debug the problem. Then comes component automation. Automation of the component is difficult because there are a number of smaller components, and for each component, we have to go through the stages of develop, building, deploying, and monitor. Then comes configuration management. Configuration maintenance for all the components across the various environments becomes challenging sometimes. Number 6. What do you mean by ubiquitous language? Well, ubiquitous language can be defined as the common language that is used by the users and developers of a specific domain to explain a specific domain easily. This language should be clear to bring all the team members on a single page together and translate so that specific machine can understand. Number 7. What do you mean by cohesion and coupling? Cohesion can be defined as the degree to which the element inside the module of a large system belong to each other. The closer they are, the more cohesion there will be. The coupling is a measure of the presence of dependencies between the components in the system. A good design and system always have high cohesion and low coupling, because if there is high coupling, the component will be more dependent on each other, which will hinder us if we want to make any change in the system. Number 8. What can be the challenges during the deployment of microservices? We can define the challenges of microservices during the deployment phase in two ways: functional or business and technical. First of all, I'll talk about challenges from a technical point of view. Well, we need to have high finance for the microservices. It requires a heavy infrastructure for the setup, and we need to have excessive plannings to manage its operation. Then you need extra finance and staff for the maintenance. Now I'll talk about challenges with respect to business and functional point of view. Components in the microservices are dependent and they rely on each other. Therefore, they need to have continuous communication between them. Debugging and testing microservices are very difficult and expensive. Microservices require complete component automation and maintenance for application. There are heavy overheads in terms of operations, and there are many challenges in their deployment as well. Number 9. What's the difference between monolithic architecture and microservices? Let's talk about monolithic architecture first. Well, it is a relatively tightly coupled architecture. It considers the whole project, and the services startup takes some time as it is slow in the monolithic architecture. If we change the data model in monolithic architecture, it affects the entire database. Now let's talk about microservices. Well, this architecture is loosely coupled. It focuses on the product and not on the projects. The services startup in microservices is fast, and if you make any change in the single data model in microservices, it will not affect the other parts of the database or the system. Number 10. Explain some of the advantages and disadvantages of the microservices. Let's start with advantages. Well, they are increased and they have improved agility, and they have improved scalability. They provide fault tolerance and isolation. Complexity is on the local level. Debugging and testing are easy to perform and are simplified. Communication between the developers and users is better, and technology can be upgraded easily. And we need smaller development teams. Now let's talk about some of the disadvantages. As it uses multiple components, it is not easy to implement them together. We need to have extensive pre-planning before using them. Third-party application control is very hard in it. It uses dependencies that are modular and hard to control. Track of modular dependencies is challenging, and there can be malicious intrusions. Challenges in the deployment, there are a lot of them, and then at the end-to-end testing is very complex. Number 11. What do you understand by RESTful? RESTful or REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is an architecture style that helps computer systems to communicate over the internet. They also make it easier to understand and implement microservices through these web services. Number 12. What testing types are used in microservices? Well, we can categorize the test types into 3 different categories. First one can be bottom level, then comes the middle level, and then comes top level. First of all, let's talk about bottom level. At this level, We perform the general tests such as the performance test and unit test. Usually, these kind of tests are entirely automated. Then comes the middle level. We perform the exploratory test at the middle level testing. For example, usability and stress testing take place at this level. Then comes top level test. We do the final testing here like acceptance testing, and this type of testing lets the stakeholders know about the different software features. Number 13. What type of strategies are used in microservices deployment? Well, we use multiple strategies in microservices deployment, and some of them are service instance per host. We use this to run one service instance per host, as the name suggests. Then comes serverless deployment. It packages the services as a zip file and then it's submitted to the Lambda function. Lambda is a stateless service that runs automatically enough to handle all requests for microservices. Then comes multiple service interfaces per host. As the name suggests, we use it to run multiple service instances of an application on a single or multiple physical or virtual host. We can also run this single service instance on it. At last, it comes service instance per container. We use it to run each service instance in the container. Number 14. What is the difference between microservices and SOA? SOA means service-oriented architecture. It's a collection of services that is used to communicate with each other through activity coordination or data passing. On the other hand, in microservices architecture, we have a collection of small functional modules that can be deployed and scaled independently. Microservices can also be specific to business goals, and communication also take place over the standard protocols. Number 15. We have domain driver design. What do you mean by that? Well, it is an architectural style that is based on the concept of object-oriented analysis design and principle. We use it to develop such systems that are complex by connecting the related components of the system into a continuously evolving system. We use the domain-driven design on the base of three principles. Focus on domain logic and core domain. Base your complex design on the models of domains. It would help if you had continuous collaboration with the domain's expert to improve the application model and regularly resolve the emerging domain-related issues. Number 16. What is OAuth? It stands for Open Authorization Protocol. This allows us to access the application of clients on the HTTP for the third-party providers like Facebook, GitHub, etc. It also helps and facilitates us to share the resources stored and available on one side or another side without their credentials. Number 17. What is the way that independent microservices are used to communicate with each other? First of all, it depends on the need of the project you are working on. But in most cases, the developer uses HTTP or REST with binary protocols or JSON. Other than that, they can use other communication protocols as well. Number 18. What is Spring Cloud? Please explain. Spring Cloud is a software that we use for the integration with external system. It allows the microservices framework to create the application that performs the restricted and limited amount of data processing. Number 19. What do you mean by distributed transaction? By distributed transaction, we mean any situation where a single unit results in the combination and mutation of two or more separate data sources that cannot be committed automatically. In the microservice phenomenon, it is even more complex as each service is a unit of work. Most of the multiple services have to work with each other to make a business successful. Number 20. What type of problem can we solve with Spring Cloud? While we develop the distributed microservices with Spring Boot, we might face some issues that the Spring Cloud can resolve. First one can be service discovery. It allows us to have the ability to handle the service discovery, and that further allows the services and processes in a cluster to communicate and find each other. Then we can have redundancies issue. Issues related to redundancy often occur in distributed systems, and Spring Cloud helps us eliminate them. Load balancing. Spring Cloud helps improve the workload distribution across many computing resources such as network links, CPUs, computer clusters, etc. Then we'll talk about reduced performance issues. Due to various operational overheads, the performance issues are reduced with the help of Spring Cloud. Then comes distributed system complexity. While distributed systems include a system that is present in a wide area and we face many issues in them, and they can be related to networks, bandwidth, security, latency, etc. And Spring Cloud helps us to overcome such issues. Number 21. What are the reactive extensions in microservices? Well, they are also known as RX. It is a design pattern that allows collecting the results by calling the services and then compiling a combined response. RX is a prevalent tool in the distributed system that works precisely opposite to the available legacy flows. Number 22. What do you mean by end-to-end testing of microservices? Well, as the name suggests, we test the whole service from one end to the other end, and we do this to validate every process in the workflow if they are functioning correctly. It also ensures that the system is working together as a whole and single unit, and it also makes sure that the system satisfies all the requirements. Number 23. What is Eureka and why it is used? Eureka Server or Eureka is an application that gets used to holding the information related to the client-server application, and microservices also have to register into Eureka Server, and then the Eureka Server knows all the client applications running on each port and the IP address. Alternatively, the Eureka Server is also known as the Netflix Service Discovery Server. It uses the Spring Cloud, and because of that, it is not heavy on the application development process. Number 24. What do you mean by bounded context? Bounded context is a pattern in the domain driver design and its central pattern. It mainly focuses on the domain-driven design, strategic design section, which is all about dealing with large teams and models. Domain-driven design deals with large models and then it divides them into different bounded contexts and is explicit about their interrelationships. Number 25. Can we create a state machine out of the microservices? As it is pretty evident that each microservice owns its database as an independent deployable program unit, so this allows us to create a state machine from it. We can also specify different states and events for particular microservices. For example, we can have an order microservice, and an order can have many different states. The transition of the order state can be an independent event in the order microservice. Number 26. What are the client certificates? It is a type of digital certificate that is used by the client system for authentication requests to a remote server, and it is known as client certificate. This certificate plays a vital role in many mutual authentication design and provides strong assurance of a requester's identity. Number 27. Why do we use the PACT in microservices architecture, or explain its role? Well, it is an open source tool that allows the testing interaction between the service providers and the consumers, but at the same time, it is separated from the contract made. As a result, it increases the microservices application's reliability. Number 28. Why do we use containers in microservices? Well, containers are one of the easiest and most effective method to manage applications based on microservices. With the help of that, we can also develop and deploy individually. With the help of Docker, we can encapsulate our microservices in a container image along with their dependencies. Without any effort, microservices can use these elements. Number 29. What is the use of Docker in microservices? Well, Docker offers a container environment that we can use to host any application. Docker is a software application, and this application and all the dependencies used to support it are tightly packaged together. Number 30. What do you mean by the term continuous monitoring? Well, continuous monitoring is a process that we use to search for the risks and compliance issues associated with the company's financial and operational environment. It contains the processes, humans, and working systems that support efficient and actual operations. And that was all about the 30 questions that you can consider for your upcoming interview related to your microservices. And that also brings us to the end of today's video. I hope now that you must have learned a lot of things from this video, and if that is the case, please leave a like, subscribe and press the bell icon. We'll get back to you in the next video. Till then, take care.